If we could start with you, there's been a flood of leaks from US intelligence and the Pentagon in recent weeks talking about the capability of North Korea. Some have interpreted that as an escalation of the United States response. But could we be interpreting that incorrectly? Could it actually be a warning from US military chiefs and the Pentagon to the administration that they need to be very, very careful in terms of the next steps they take here because of what North Korea could do in response?
Sam, good morning. Yes, I think there's a lot of truth in that, particularly the National Security Agency's warning that a nuclear warhead has been miniaturised and could be fitted to a missile. Now, the estimate is that North Korea only has 20 to 60 nuclear warheads, and this is not a force that's going to overwhelm anyone at all. But the unpredictable nature of North Korea means we don't know how they're going to be used. But it does come really back to the fact that we all need to be very, very careful. This is very, very serious, and this requires real statesmanship.
Senator, interested in your thoughts on Julie Bishop's comments there about this THAAD defence system. Do you think Australia should be looking at this sort of system?
Oh, probably not. I think North Korea's got targets that are more attractive to it than Australia. But I do think, though, that the days of being nice about this and appeasing North Korea are probably over. I was in Seoul just last month, and, you know, if you can judge what taxi drivers say, their view is that the North Korean leadership, particularly Kim Jong-un, is a lunatic. Now, we've seen other lunatics in charge of countries before, Saddam Hussein, Pol Pot, for example, and plenty of others before that. And they don't typically, lunatics in charge of countries, typically don't respond to reason and common sense and things like that. What they are interested in, though, is self-preservation. I think it's probably time for Trump and other allies to say to North Korea, well, look, you know, you are the ones in danger. None of you will personally survive if you initiate a first strike. We're guaranteeing that we will flatten the crap out of you with a second strike if you do that. So just have a little think about what you're doing.
I'm interested in your views of this fairly tough analysis as well here too, Jim Mullen, because this is quite a serious point, is it not? That we keep having all these diplomats tell us, you know, everything's fine, nothing to see here, sanctions working well. They've just fired a missile across Japan.
And I think, Sam, that one of the most important parts about that is that they didn't fire that missile at Guam. And that was the back down that occurred a couple of weeks ago, and this was a missile fired across, which could easily and quickly be assessed as not being a threat to anyone. But I think David's right. We've had 25 years, at least 3 presidents worth of diplomacy, and diplomacy is critical. You've got to keep doing diplomacy, and you've got to keep your nuclear deterrent well to the front of everything that happens in relation to North Korea. But I also think that as we go through the strategic steps that should be taken, after you've continued diplomacy, after you've got your nuclear deterrent well and truly out to the front out there, you've got to establish the coalition. I think that's been done. You've got to reassure China. You've got to improve missile defence. You've got to build up an overwhelming military force, and I think that's probably been done. And then you really decide how serious you're going to get about this, and then your options open up. But I think David's right in relation to the THAAD missile system. That's not applicable to us, but what is applicable to Australia is the equipping of our air warfare destroyers as soon as we can with the option of carrying the standard missile that can shoot down incoming missiles, incoming intercontinental ballistic missiles. That's in the white paper. It's way out in the future, but I think it's coming very, very much, should be brought to the left a lot more than it is now.
Senator, there seems to be a bit of a question about when is best to do what you say in terms of taking out that strike, even flattening the leadership of North Korea, but doing so in a way that they don't respond first. Is it possible to essentially get all your cards into place before starting to play the game without them noticing and retaliating?
Well, Jim makes a good point that that you need to try all the other options first. And but although we've had decades of diplomacy, and I think we are dealing, I think we're dealing with a nutter here who doesn't understand diplomacy. I don't think you need to have all your ducks lined up in a row before you can say, or you can adopt a policy that you would call guaranteed second strike. Guaranteed second strike. So it doesn't matter what you do, North Korea, if you strike anywhere, Japan, Guam, the United States, Australia, you will get flattened. We guarantee it. It's not negotiable. There will be no diplomacy. You won't get prior warning. You will just get flattened. And none of you guys who are responsible for that will survive. We know where you live, and we've got bombs big enough to flatten you. So I think we should just say, OK, think about it. If you want to live in the world, if you want to survive, see your kids grow up, whatever it is, don't go doing anything stupid, because if you do something stupid, you won't see all that.
Jim Mullen, I'm interested in your thoughts as well, just to flesh out what you were saying about the trajectory of this missile. Now, I have seen some foreign policy experts comment this morning that if you look at the trajectory, it seems to be aimed, yes, to fly across Japan, but to fly across the least possible area of Japan. There is other ways it could have flown. And so it was really about, was it not like them backing away really from dropping a missile in waters off Guam that would have obviously immediately invoked the United States as United States territory, and to do something very dramatic, but also to do something that didn't possibly inflame it quite as much as other actions may have?
And I think this is where we really require incredible statesmanship, incredible judgment. We're on the edge here. The Americans will know when missiles are wheeled out from wherever they're hidden. They'll know what the kind of missiles they are. What they won't know is which direction they will initially go, but they'll quickly know that. There are about 6 or 7 ways if a missile is fired towards Guam, for example, and I don't believe at this stage that they're capable of, or I'd like to think they're not silly enough, although David's right, the man is a nutter. They're not serious enough to have a go at an American city, because I believe that would bring on David's second strike. The one thing I have faith in, and I believe that the Americans have compromised on conventional defence over many years, the one thing I have faith in is the nuclear deterrent. Now, the assessments will be going on 24 hours a day and in great detail. If you try to get in and strike first, you'd have to make up your mind, are you prepared to use nuclear weapons if the North Koreans use conventional weapons against Seoul? Well, the estimates are that something between 30,000 people and 300,000 people will die. And it seems to me that that may be a fair proposition. But this is where we require judgment and statesmanship.
And Jim, the Japanese military didn't shoot down this missile this morning. Why do you think that is? Is it because they wanted to see where it would go, where it would land, the capabilities of it? Or was it the fact that this was so remote a location that they in fact didn't have the ability to shoot it down up there?
I think they have the ability to shoot it down. They have the Aegis cruisers in the Sea of Japan. They have a number of systems which could go for it, plus the Americans are sitting behind them with Alaska-based missiles. If it was a threat, then I think they would have had a go at it. But it's very quickly can be determined where this thing is going to land, and there is no point raising the tension when you're talking about nuclear weapons. I agree with David. You have got to be able to uncompromisingly say that if you do a certain thing, such as attack Seoul or use a nuclear weapon, we will destroy you, and no compromises on that. But I think they were very quickly able to assess it was not a threat.
Okay, just staying with you for one moment longer, Jim, and then I do have a question for David. I just wanted to put up a tweet. This is a tweet from Ankit Panda. He's a senior editor for the Diplomat magazine, and he said the location of this launch is interesting too. The Republic of Korea Joint Chief of Staff reporting the launch took place from near Sunan, the site of Pyongyang's international airport. Now, what do you make of anything, Jim Mullen, if they have fired this from near the international airport? Does it mean anything to you?
I guess the only thing it means is that they have great flexibility where they can move it. They seem to be truck mounted. They seem to be solid state. Therefore, you can put them out and fire them very quickly. If they were going to use a nuclear-tipped warhead, where they fire it from is pretty irrelevant because it's going to come back to them in the form of American nuclear missiles. So I guess that's about the only thing you can say, is that they have great flexibility, and it goes to the point David was making before. If you're going to have a preemptive attack on North Korea to remove the leadership and nuclear weapons and the threat to Seoul, you've got to be sure you're going to get every single